Episode 24, Facing the Bad Bullies.
What happened?
Jeff asked. A ball of anger rose in his chest.
Nothing. Why are you here?
Lelaine answered. She'd been focusing on wiping the wounds with a cotton swab and alcohol, so she hadn't noticed when Jeff arrived. She lowered her head and covered her face with her hands.
Let me see.
Jeff said as he sat beside her. He grabbed her hand and slowly pulled it down, close up. The wounds on Lelaine's face were even more shocking. One of the cuts was still bleeding.
Tell me who did this to you.
Jeff's heart ached when he saw her face.
Okay, it was Scarlett Anderson and her friends, but it's okay. They just nudged me a little.
Lelaine said timidly.
The 3 girls who were teasing you that day in the restaurant cuisine. Right. I'll go find them now and teach them a lesson.
Jeff stood up and prepared to find Scarlett and the others to give them a piece of his mind.
Don't.
Lelaine quickly pulled Jeff back.
It's not as simple as you think. Scarlett has powerful friends. If you have a go at them now, we'll be the ones to suffer in the end.
Then we'll just let them bully you forever.
Jeff frowned as he glanced at Lelaine. Lelaine lowered her head slightly at Jeff's words and whispered.
I'm doing this for your own good. I'll just stay away from them in the future.
All right.
Jeff's heart softened.
Lelaine's considering my safety even now.
He thought.
But why is such a kind girl being bullied? Come on, I'll take you to the hospital now.
Jeff held Lelaine's hand and was about to leave.
No need. The hospital is very expensive. I don't have that kind of money.
She whispered and stayed where she was.
You don't have to pay.
Jeff looked at Lelaine helplessly and pulled her toward the hospital. Lelaine's injuries were quickly dealt with, and Jeff paid the bill.
Thank you. I'll pay you back.
Lelaine looked at Jeff and felt very happy. She could feel his concern for her. She'd never had a man care about her like he did.
We'll talk about it in the future.
Jeff said. He didn't care about the money.
You haven't eaten, right? I'll take you to a nice place to eat.
Nice place?
Lelaine opened her eyes wide. She felt uncomfortable and wasn't sure she wanted to go. She'd never eaten a $5 meal in the cafeteria, much less an expensive meal in a nice restaurant. She continued.
Let's not. It's too expensive. I think the food in the cafeteria is pretty good.
But Jeff interrupted her. He shook his head and smiled. Then he took her hand and led her away from the campus.
Just follow me, please. Just eat and don't worry about anything today,
he said. Arriving at the Upland restaurant, Lelaine felt a little nervous because Jeff looked like he didn't fit in any better than she did.
Did he actually come to this restaurant?
She wondered.
It's not all a joke, is it?
But when she saw Jeff calmly ordering the food, Lelaine relaxed. She started to think that Jeff was a bit of a mystery. He seemed very worldly and experienced. Then Jeff said,
Wait for me here. I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be back soon.
He walked to the restroom. Lelaine sat alone in her seat, looking around her. She'd never been to such a sophisticated restaurant before, and so she was curious about everything. Then she heard a voice from one side.
Is that Lelaine?
The voice said. Lelaine's nerves tensed up, and she clenched her fists tightly. She knew it was Scarlett.
Yeah, it really is her. I thought I must be mistaken.
Scarlett stood in front of Lelaine, looking at her with a sneer. Scarlett's 2 friends stood next to her. One of them shouted,
Have you gone crazy over the last few days? First you ate at the restaurant cuisine, and now you're being even more extravagant. To think that you would actually dare to come and eat here.
Scarlett took over.
You really are shameless spending your scholarship this way. We only come here once a week. You're a poor loser who can't even afford to eat. What gives you the right to eat here?
As she spoke, Scarlett pulled sharply on Lelaine's hair. Lelaine's head was pulled back, revealing her snow-white neck.
Please don't hit me here.
She cried.
When we get back to the campus, you can do whatever you want to me.
Lelaine didn't want Jeff to see her getting beaten up. When they heard Lelaine pleading for mercy, Scarlett and the other 2 felt even happier. They all started laughing gleefully.
She's trying to trick us in the past. She's never even made a sound when we hit her, let alone begging for mercy.
Scarlett sneered as she grabbed Lelaine's hair and pulled her back with all her strength, bringing her face right up to Lelaine. She said,
Since you asked me to let you go, I'm not going to. That'll be proof that you're my bitch, a dog under my control.
With that, Scarlett flung Lelaine off and raised her arm to slap her. The wounds on Lelane's face had just started to heal, but with one slap for Scarlett, a few of them split open again. It was extremely painful. Lelane tried to get away.
Ugly, get back here.
Scarlett shouted.
Stop running and maybe I won't beat you to death tonight when we get back to the dorms.
Scarlett and her friends gestured angrily at Lelane. Lelane wasn't an idiot. She knew she had to get out of there as quickly as she could. As Lelane was trying to get away, she bumped into a sturdy body.
It's Jeff.
She thought, and her heart slowed. Jeff had already guessed what was happening when he saw the state Lelane was in and then saw Scarlett and her friends. He held Lelane and looked coldly at Scarlett. Scarlett barely looked at Jeff as she said,
Hey, isn't this the other pauper who was eating a restaurant cuisine? Did these two people stay together? It really is a good match.
One of her friends joined in.
I was wondering why she's loitering outside for the past few days. It looks like she's been stealing men outside. You shameless little whore. Luckily, you're the only one that deserves such a poor loser.
Why did you hit her?
Jeff asked calmly. Scarlett laughed and answered with disdain.
Why do we still need a reason to beat a pauper? Lelane's just a dog for us to have fun with in our dorm. Does a master need to have a reason to hit his dog?
I'm warning you, don't touch her again.
Jeff said with a cold stare.
Yeah, right. You still want to stick up for this girl, right? Come on, try touching me if you have something to say. I told you, if you try anything, then we'll bully her even more in the future. There is nothing you can do to stop me.
Scarlett said provocatively. Jeff went to slap Scarlett, but Lelane pulled him back and shook her head at him. Just then, 3 men walked into the restaurant and walked towards Scarlett. They were all elegantly dressed and were clearly here to meet Scarlett and her friends for a meal.
Miss Anderson, what's going on? Did this fool provoke you?
A stocky man with a crew cut pointed at Jeff as he spoke to Scarlett. Another man with tattoos on his arms addressed Jeff.
Idiot! Someone like you dares to try on Miss Anderson. Let me tell you right now, we are all from the Alpha Kappa Rho Society. If you know what's good for you'll stay away from us.
The remaining man even pushed Jeff away.
Get lost, or I might hit you right now.
He wanted to fight with them, but Lelane held his hand and whispered in his ear.
Let's go.
Jeff realized that it would be stupid to fight with them right now. He didn't care what happened to him, but he didn't want Lelane to get hurt again. Instead, he followed Lelane toward the door.
Oh, aren't you helping your little girlfriend out? Well, what a shame. If I had a boyfriend like you, I'd definitely dump him.
Scarlett stood behind him with her arms crossed and mocked him proudly.
What is the Alpha Kappa Rho Society?
Jeff asked Lelane as they walked out of the restaurant. Lelane replied,
It's an organization near our school. They're very powerful. Scarlett and the rest belong to the Alpha Kappa Rho Society. That's why we can't afford to get on the wrong side of them. That's why I stopped you just now.
Jeff didn't say anything in his heart. He'd secretly decided that he must find a way to let Lelane know that he, Jeff, was not someone to be trifled with.
Oh, yeah, and I've decided to move out of the dorm.
Lelane looked at Jeff and continued.
I've checked around the school, and I found a room. There's only one bed and no internet, but I think it's pretty good. I'm going to rent it.
When Jeff heard this, he agreed wholeheartedly. If Lelane lived outside, she wouldn't be bullied by Scarlett. However, the room she'd found was much too basic. Jeff decided to surprise her by finding her a better room. Jeff took Lelane to the hospital to have her wound rebandaged. Then they ate a meal in the cafeteria before parting ways. The next day, Jeff took a taxi and directly went to the Green Island Garden District, an upper-class residential district close to Peston University. Jeff had been thinking about it all day.
I've got money now.
He thought,
Why shouldn't I buy a house for Lelane to live in? It'll be much more comfortable for her than renting a room.
the Green Island Garden District was a small and exclusive residential area that had been developed over recent years. It was convenient for transportation, had a superior position, and had first-rate facilities. It was a super luxurious small district of New York. Jeff went straight to the sales office. The current manager, Darla, was prettier than the last. Selling a property here earned her a commission of $50,000. Jeff had heard from his classmates that Darla was therefore willing to do shameful things for her customers in order to sell houses. Usually, when Darla and the other salespeople saw a customer enter, they would immediately greet them with a smile. However, when they saw Jeff enter, no one went up to greet him.